Welcome back, everybody, for another episode of Magic 2015. I want to start this episode by saying today is the very first day in the history of the world that America has gotten the question correct in the question of gay marriage, and I'm saying that's awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations to everyone.
Supreme
who that
Court,
affects.
baby.
It's a fantastic thing.
Now, I mean, it depends entirely on whether or not the states are gonna listen, because they can make their own laws saying, like, nah, fuck the Supreme Court, and it could be like a drudging, like, 30-year battle. So...
Let's not get cynical, though, and just let's say, it's a breath of fresh air.
It's pretty cool.
A little bit of reality back in the
cool.
world.
However, I'm gonna be a little bit more cynical again. Oh no, it's waiting for players. All right.
I'm not in the game?
I figured that might be a problem, and it ended up... Dude, we should have checked beforehand. That's fine. But I'll just invite you right now. You have to get online again, though.
Yeah.
But, yeah. I'll be slightly more cynical and say that, it'd be really nice if the Supreme Court would make this kind of a decision, you know, like, before half the states in the Union already said, yeah, that's probably, you know, right.
Look, if I wanted to go down that road, I agree 100%. Why the hell didn't this happen several years ago already? If not, you know, much longer, considering the question is pretty obvious. But yeah, I'm just glad that it happened, that's all.
Yeah, like I said, it's pretty fucking cool. It's a good thing. And also, you can tell that we're recording this episode the day it goes up.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a historic thing, too. Like, this is going to be one of those major things in textbooks.
Mm-hmm.
Probably. As of today, there will be children being born who don't know what it's like to be before this date.
Yeah.
Which is pretty wild.
That is true. Well, I mean, you could say that about every day, really.
Historic date.
I get you. I get you.
The date, yeah.
Yeah. But, yeah, no, it's pretty fucking cool. And you know what was really cool is my favorite esports team, to bring it over to Dota, EG, they tweeted a tie-dye version of their EG logo and tweeted with like #LoveWins. And I was like, you know what? That's really fucking cool, EG, because you're like a fucking major multi-million-dollar organization that is across multiple video games, and you get paid, the majority of your income is from sponsorships from big businesses. So for you to like publicly come out with something, no pun intended, you know, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Do you think that it diminishes the impact of a thing like this for it to be kind of relegated to becoming a Twitter hashtag? It's a vague question. It applies to a lot of different elements, not just this, but I'm just kind of curious what you think about that.
Nah, that's everything now, so...
It just is the way it is now,
That's just how the world is. Everything's a Twitter hashtag, so... I mean, I don't know. I sent you a link to selfies@funerals.tumblr.com.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, those Instagram pics all had a bunch of hashtags, which were like #funeral, #aunt, like Jane.
#aunt.
It was like, who is searching #aunt? And then in the like on the next part of that, if you are searching #aunt, do you want to like see pictures of aunts that are dead? Like, is that?
No, I don't want to see that.
It's like I don't get.
It's not in my list of interests at all.
Oh man, kids these days. But yeah, I don't know, man. Everything's a fucking hashtag. I mean, that's fine. It's whatever. If people need to express themselves that way, people need to express themselves that way. This is who am I to judge? I'm just an old fart.
Yeah, it's weird being old, isn't it?
Yeah, kinda.
We're not quite at the point yet, though, where the majority of people are younger than us. We're still kind of, like, right in the middle.
Yeah.
Culturally, we're not deemed irrelevant. I don't mean that as a shot fired at people who think that they're too old and that they're now irrelevant. It's just, like, it's a feeling you get, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, everybody feels that way at some point. Some earlier than others, I suppose.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really care that much. Oh god, I was muting my microphone. Sorry about that.
Okay.
I don't know.
Gonna make your own relevance in the world, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, man. I'm old. I'm getting older. I don't like it that much.
Oh, really? You are?
Yeah. Apparently everyone
That's
is.
pretty shocking.
I read there was in r/science. Apparently everyone ages. I was unaware. So.
Isn't there like a fountain we can go to that? I don't
No,
know,
that's the
chemically changes us.
that's actually the Holy Grail, and you can only like stay immortal if you stay in the room with the last Templar. So.
Oh, did you learn about that from an Assassin's Creed game?
No, that's actually Indiana Jones.
Huh.
Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
I think I'm dead.
Are you?
Real soon. Like,
Already?
not next turn, but I don't have anything coming up that's going to help me.
Well, the good news for you is that I don't have much coming up that's going to help me either, so.
Are you planning on doubling your power again next turn? Because that would be nice to not have. Tell me that, are you?
I don't think so. But,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Let's put that out.
What does this do? Bident? It's a Bident. It's Joe Bident.
It's like,
Joe
it looks like
Bident
a
of
fork
Thassa.
to me,
Yeah, it's like a tuning fork.
but it's not a trident. They took one of the dents away.
Yeah.
It's one less dent, so it's a bident.
It's only a Bident, yeah.
So is a spear just a dent?
I guess so, yeah.
Huh.
I guess technically it is.
I've learned so much from this single card. Although it's just magically sitting in the air, too. You can't tell at all how big it is. It could be like 100 feet tall.
I think it is 100 feet tall.
The Lance of Longinus.
That could be the like Mount Everest right behind it there. After
Kill an angel with that
after
thing.
Waterworld. You know, that's just the top
Why do
of
we
Mount
talk
Everest.
about Waterworld so much?
I mean, it's a fantastic film. They spent didn't they spend like $100 million on that movie or something?
I just have no idea. I've
They
seen it
spent
once,
so
and I
much
didn't
money
find
on
it to be that great, so I've never watched it again.
That's pretty bad. That's probably a pretty reasonable opinion to have on Waterworld. So what the hell does this thing do? Oh, killed my.
Trying to stay alive, man.
He killed my enchantment and he got life for it.
That's the exchange that we have these days.
It's a bad exchange rate. That's like America to the euro. For me, at least. I'm America. Which is great today. Today it's a good day to be patriotic.
What a little dance we just went down there.
Yeah.
Right? Which is great today.
Some days it's not good to be patriotic. Today's a good day. Oh, well, whatever. Sure, I guess I'll have to fucking make one of my creatures not able to block this turn. Whatever.
It's gonna be really interesting to see what happens when our next president gets elected. And I'm not really trying to go down that road. I'm just saying it's gonna be interesting no matter what happens. That's all.
I'm not looking forward to election season. Because we're probably going to revisit this topic again.
I'm mostly not looking forward to it because Jon Stewart won't be doing the Daily Show anymore.
That's
one of the biggest reasons.
I hope that new guy's good.
Yeah, out of respect to Jon Stewart, I will watch it several times, but I will probably not enjoy it.
Well, hey, maybe he's great. That's possible.
The problem is, like, there's a little bit of me that's, like, just frustrated that he's not there, so I think I'm going to put that onto him whether or not I try to.
Yeah. Did you ever watch the Craig Kilborn version?
Yes.
You
Yeah, that's
did.
when I started, and at the beginning of that, I was like, or at the end of that, I was like, I can't believe this guy Jon Stewart's taking Craig Kilborn's job. This is going to be bullshit. Yeah, so I agree. I can change my mind.
I saw a thing that was really cool where it was George Carlin, another one of my idols. He was interviewed by Jon Stewart in like '95, and the last thing that he said to Jon Stewart in that interview was, "You're gonna show us a lot, and I'm excited to see you do it." And that was the end of the interview when he was talking about Jon Stewart, which I thought was pretty cool. What are you doing here? John land permanent to my hand. It's rude.
I'm doing stuff because if I don't do stuff, I'm gonna be doing dead stuff soon.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Play some more artifacts, please.
I want some more lands, is what I want. Hey!
For what do you know?
Oh, I should be doing this. Yeah.
So I picked this deck kind of at random. I didn't really think about how it would match up with your Goblin World, and apparently it doesn't very well.
Yeah, it seems like if it doesn't go out swinging real fast, troubles will be had.
I don't know if you even remember this one, but the idea was that you like put all your cards back in your hand. This is best used against one like particularly difficult creature instead of tons of little ones.
Right, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's not good against the
It's
goblins.
not, what we're doing right now.
Oh, you got hot soup.
I do have hot soup, which allows me to stay alive one more turn by killing it.
What a combo.
Yeah. That's desperation, folks.
That is a desperation combo if I've ever seen one.
Apparently I put, like, no creatures in this at all. Feels weird, man.
Yeah, I've been there. Hold on, I have to go on Do Not Disturb. Sorry about that, people watching with the Skypes.
We're a mess today.
Yeah. We're a hot mess today.
Hot, sticky mess.
We're
What's new in the world of gaming for you, Rob? Anything?
Other
than Batman.
Arkham Knight is fucking awesome. Like, it's really good. Actually, that's something to talk about because they removed it from Steam. So, good for them. I mean, personally, I don't have any issues with the release. Like, it's not that the port's really not that bad
for you.
No, I mean, there's some, like, minor... Like, yeah, there are some frame rate issues from time to time.
That's what they specifically were referring to when they said there was problems with performance.
Yeah, I mean, but they were minor for me, and I have all the settings up to the max, so... But,
because you have a 970.
I do have a beastly
one
PC.
of the recommended cards, and a 970's, like, came out this year, right?
Yeah, or, like, a year ago or something like that, year or two ago, so... Yeah, I mean,
it's in the like $500 or $300 to $500 price range, so it's not
something like. Well, I think it's less than 300. So yeah, no, it's definitely not cheap, the card and stuff. Yeah, I mean, but there are also people who were saying that they have a 970 and couldn't run it. So there is that.
Like whenever this happens, when somebody makes a declaration of like it didn't run or it did run, there's always this world full of the counter argument saying like, well, because it didn't do that for me, it applies to everyone the way that it happened to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally understand that sentiment regarding my argument with it. But at the same time, I really feel like people are overreacting with this particular scenario. Because if you remember, Grand Theft Auto 5 launched with its fair share of problems, and in fact, I don't think ever was fixed, where, like, everybody was having trouble with the game crashing. No matter what rig you were running.
It still wasn't fixed?
No, that's never been fixed. It's still a problem. And the UI is the exact same UI as the console version, despite it taking a year and a half for them to make the port. I guess the one thing that really isn't a problem with GTA that is a problem with Batman, according to most people, is that it has slightly more options as far as what you can do to change the settings. So, you know, it's... I don't know. I find it's strikingly strange that that people weren't doing quite that thing with GTA 5, which still has those issues, as I've said. Right. So I mean, I don't know. Granted, people are having more performance issues, I think, with Batman than they are with GTA, but people were more willing to say, like, okay, only high-end machines can run GTA 5 than people were willing to say that for Batman.
Which would you rather have, intermittent crashes or low frame rate peppering through your game?
I'd rather have the low frame rate. Because
I'd rather have neither.
For me, well, yeah, obviously, yeah. But for me, like, the low frame rate is very minimal. Like, I run a solid 60 pretty much most of the time. The only times that it ever drops in frame rate are some sections with the Batmobile when it's, like, raining really hard and then there's, like, lightning flashing.
And you're moving through the world horizontally and it's loading in new sections of the city.
Yeah, and I'm also, like drifting because it has that volumetric fog thing that actually looks really cool. That'll cause some frame rate issues sometimes, but not all the time. Also, like I can burn out with that car, like do donuts, and I won't have any frame rate issues on the game. I will have frame rate issues with OBS though. And another gripe that I have is that for some reason game capture does not work with that game. Only window capture does. which I don't know what the deal is with that.
I don't think that's really a gripe you can have with the game specifically. That's just how they routed the rendering engine, most likely.
Yeah.
What I think Game Capture does is it takes the output from the DirectX like codec directly like through the back end of it, and if it doesn't route through that for some reason, then Windows is the only way to capture it because you're just taking like an imprint of your monitor at that frame region.
Yeah. I mean,
so that's not really their fault.
It's
that's
not.
Just the way it works.
Yeah, but I mean, that's like one of the only problems I've had with the port, honestly. Aside from again the here and there frame rate issues that have come up.
Where do you draw the line for what should be a working port when it comes to PC? Because the expectation is we want a 60 FPS, 1080p port that doesn't crash and doesn't have bugs, and it must run on X amount of video cards spanning however many years. Like, where do you have that line?
Which is impossible. But
yeah, like, you can't assert that, oh, this has to run on my GTX 770 that I got 2 years ago. If it's trying to be cutting edge.
And that's why I was saying that some of the, like, a lot of this hate on Arkham Knight has been very bandwagony, because I read through a lot of the reviews. Well, okay, I won't say a lot of the reviews, since there's like 15,000 of them, and they're all like, this game sucks, fuck it, and like all this stuff. But I read at least a lot of the top reviews, and some of them were like, yeah, this game has performance issues, I can't run it on my 550 mobile card, like, what a shitty port. Like, okay, man, like, maybe you should read the specs of the game before you buy it, because maybe you're new to PC gaming or something, but you can't just fucking run every game on your shitty old laptop. So, like, I don't know, I'm not contending that it's a great port or anything. I'm not saying that, because with my current rig and with the game's current graphical fidelity, which, let's be honest, is not like super duper amazing. Like, it looks really cool. A lot of the physics type stuff with like the volumetric fog and the shattering of buildings and stuff, that looks really good, and that looks next gen. But the rest of the art and stuff and the texture quality and stuff like that, it does sort of look like it's running on UE3, which I think it might be. I don't know if it's on UE4. So my rig should be running that game 60 FPS, 1080p, no problem, without any frame rate dip ever. It's not.
You say that, but there's these effects that you're talking about, those NVIDIA-specific effects like the volumetric fog, and those eat up frames like mad.
That's true. But even so, like, my machine is basically top of the line right now. Like,
right, but there's no standard that says, like, all machines can perform with this set of variables, because the variables are different from every game.
I mean, that's true.
If you extend out the view distance infinitely, like, it doesn't matter what computer you have, you won't be able to render it all.
That's true as well. But either way, I will contend that it's not the greatest port the world's ever known. That said,
it's not the worst.
It's definitely not the worst.
And I've heard a lot of people saying it's the worst port that's ever come out, and I don't get that argument either.
People have been saying, like, a lot of the reviews are like, this is the worst port in like 20 years. Like, are you fucking, have you Assassin's Creed, like, the past, like, 5 games?
I
like,
get the hate for Warner
GTA
Brothers in
5?
general.
Yeah, I mean, me too, totally.
They kind of suck in a lot of ways, but I don't think this is one of those cases where you can really hold up that argument just based on that. It's vitriol at that point.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's but you know what? Despite all of that, good on Rocksteady for being like. Did you read their letter when they pulled it from Steam?
I read it, but I forgot. What did it say?
But basically, it was saying that, like, okay, so people really dislike the port. We agree. It's not as optimized as we want it to be. We're gonna pull the game from Steam selling until we fix it and it comes back. And here is a step-by-step list of how you can get your game refunded. Okay. So, it's like, well, fuck. I mean, you know, I can't...
Refunded through Steam or refunded through them?
Steam. Yeah.
Okay,
from the Steam refund thing.
The cynical people were saying that a lot of the reason they took it back was because Steam refunds are now a thing, and they wanted to make, like, a really positive, forward-facing statement about the fact that, like, they were open to the idea that people aren't happy. So sort of meeting them with this level of expectation of like, oh, we're a good company and we're doing things to help, so you probably won't refund it because you can see we're working with you, right? Do you think that that's just straight up cynicism, or do you think there's any truth to that?
I think that is cynicism, because I mean I mean they said they gave you like how to refund your game until it's better. Like they're willing to let you refund the game until it's better. There's a good likelihood that they might have really pushed for, you know, consoles to work, because it does not run as well as it does on PC on consoles, I'll say. Like all of the graphical settings are on the lowest on consoles, like the lowest settings that you have on PC on consoles, and it doesn't have any of the NVIDIA like volumetric fog and all that cool shit. And it runs at 30 frames per second. So like, I mean,
is it even 1080p on Xbox? It's usually 900.
It's probably 900. I don't know. So like, consoles yet again hold back game development. It seems, because they had to, you know, try to tie down the game to make them work.
Right,
on,
but
on
look
those
at the
machines.
sales of the combined console sales versus Steam. It's probably greater. By
I would imagine, yeah. So that's
why they put that.
That's exactly
there.
why, yeah. And again, this is why I think, you know, that a lot of this probably has to do a bit with Warner Brothers. And then on top of that, considering all that they probably spent most of their development time trying to get it working properly and looking good on consoles. Because of that, it's probably why the PC port suffered. And Warner Brothers was probably like, well, let's not have a staggered release. Let's release it all at the same time so we could get the maximum amount of value on release day. And
well,
the
wouldn't
PC
the maximum
port was
amount of value, would be release it on console, then a month later release it on PC so people buy it twice.
Maybe
that.
Yeah, but I
GTA
think
5.
I don't know if Dark Souls is.
It's not in the same ballpark,
Yeah.
if that's what you're saying.
That's I don't know
like
if Dark Souls. Actually, maybe the Arkham series has sold better than Dark Souls. I don't know. I don't think so. But
You don't think so? I think it probably did. It's a Batman property.
yeah, that's and it's good is the other thing.
Right.
So
yeah, not like Dark Souls 2, am I right?
Oh, wrecked. No,
Sorry.
but I mean, like,
Sorry,
compared to other superhero games, it's good. So
I knew that's what you were saying.
yeah.
Dumb.
Yeah, but so I don't know. You know, it's just really unfortunate that the main thing that they're talking about is how bad the PC port is of Arkham Knight.
Right,
That's
how good the game
overshadowing. Yeah, completely overshadowing how really fucking brilliant the game is. Like, honestly, I'm like halfway through. This is probably better than both of the other games. Let's just forget Arkham Origins exists.
Forgetting Arkham.
Yeah, just forget Origins. Because the Asylum and City are the ones that are made by Rocksteady, the main guys who decided to make this series. So, like, you know, I don't really consider the Warner Brothers cash in on Arkham Origins, which I mean, you know, it actually isn't a bad game. It's just, you know, it doesn't deserve the Arkham title, is all I'll say.
Batman doesn't deserve to ever be put in a position where he can't walk around the edge of a building because there's an invisible wall there. That's what
they did that in Arkham Origins a lot.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it was very frustrating. Like, the Arkham Origins, see, like, that it kind of just shows the difference between. And this is why I'm always wary. And people aren't as wary as I am when another company goes out and makes another game in a series that still has the same title. I'm always wary because things like Arkham Origins happens, where Arkham Origins, while not being a bad game, basically just aped Arkham City, and they didn't really bring too much new to the franchise. And on top of that, like, they just didn't understand the design philosophy. That was the thing, right? Like, Rocksteady has always said, from Arkham Asylum on, is that we're not just gonna make the city bigger just because. We want you to be able to do things in that city. There's no reason to have it bigger if you don't have more, like, if it's not filled with stuff. And which is why you could, I'm pretty sure, actually, Arkham Knight is smaller than Arkham Origins.
You know, I hate to make this weird statement, but I kind of feel like Arkham Asylum is sort of superior to all of them in the fact that it actually has the most, like, considered routing through the game.
People have totally made that claim before as well, and I understand that. I mean, I really love Arkham Asylum. I think that's a great game too. It's almost just different
I think it's just a preference, personally. I like the whole Metroidvania element, and applying Batman to a Metroidvania game seems awesome.
Yeah.
Putting you in a city, though, removes the ability to have those artificial barriers.
Well, they still did that, though. Yeah, in some ways, for sure. But they still did that, though. I mean, the game has always been, like, you know, a sweet beat-em-up with an awesome combat system that has been ripped off, like, 100 times since. And with, like, Zelda dungeons and, like, a Metroidvania, you need this item to progress type of thing.
I want to maybe say that it's a bit of a stretch to call them Zelda dungeons. I see what you're saying, but
no, I really
like
think
buildings,
they are.
though.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I mean, like, I mean, like, design-wise, they're dungeons essentially. Like, it's you'll have like a gauntlet room, and then and then you'll have a puzzle or something. And,
no, I get it.
And you have to use, and you just got this new upgrade, whether it was inside the dungeon or just before the dungeon, and you have to use that upgrade to progress through the dungeon. So I mean, it basically, like, design wise, it's basically Zelda, in that way, the dungeons at least. So
I just can't wrap my mind around calling it a dungeon. That's all.
Hey,
get what you're
Arkham
saying.
Asylum was definitely more of like a dungeony type of atmosphere for a lot of the things. They're kind of like definitely like
modern industrial dungeon.
Yeah, I mean you had like all the wards look different, and you know, you had like the poison ivy one, which was all like planty and shit like that. So I mean, yeah, I mean, as far as like game design is concerned, like disregarding the port and all that stuff, things that I'm not super into in the game is a lot of the combat with the vehicle seems very forced.
The whole way that they go around the whole Batman doesn't kill people thing just seems bizarrely contrived to me.
There's a lot of that, but I mean that one I don't mind as much because it's always kind of been like that in the Batman games, and also it's really hard to.
When you were streaming it, the dude was like right next to an explosion.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Batman's like, I gotta get far away from this explosion when there's all these about to be dead people laying in front of it.
Yeah, I know, I love that part too. That was really funny.
So silly.
Yeah, well, and then also, like, the Batmobile, when you run people over, the way that they get around Batman not killing people is when you hit people with your Batmobile, what it does is it actually just shoots out, like, a taser dart at them before the Batmobile even hits them that sends them flying into the air. But the thing is, once they're unconscious on the ground, you could just totally just run them over, and they would be super dead. And you do run them over all the time. So, you know, it's just like a suspension of disbelief thing that I'm willing to give them because it's Batman, and there's really not a great way to do it.
I was thinking about that, like what other options there would be, and some of the ones that I landed on were like, okay, you could have him run to a dead stop. You could take control away from from the player. That's awful. Nobody wants that.
Mm-hmm.
You could just sort of make them disappear. I've seen people do that in games before, where it looks like you're hitting them, but actually you just kind of go through them.
Yeah.
Or like they vanish or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not satisfying either. But like, it's kind of a weird double entendre, and that's not the right word. It's a double-edged sword in that you're hitting them. You feel the satisfaction of hitting them in a way, but they don't die, so you're not really hitting them. You created this paradigm where it can't really exist.
It's definitely a fine line to tread, but I honestly think Rocksteady has done it pretty well, compared to what you could do. Because like they never give you free reign over Gotham, right? Like every game there is some sort of setup that's like, okay, the only people that you're going to be able to interact with are totally bad guys, so it's fine for you to be beating the shit out of everyone. So
that's the thing too. There's soldiers, like NPCs, that aren't bad, and you can't touch them at all. Like you'll just punch at them and they won't react, or anything will happen.
Oh, in yeah, so rarely, yeah, but that does happen, yeah.
It's really weird looking when that happens. You're just flailing away at them, and you just can't make contact, like there's an invisible box around them, because there is actually an invisible box.
Yeah. No, yeah, rarely in the game there is that, but I think part of the thing is what I'm saying about Rocksteady, and actually this goes back to what I was talking about, the difference between them and whoever developed Arkham Origins, is they understand the design reasoning for doing certain things. Like, they don't make it... The only reason that they would ever put in something like X, or X or Y into the game is if it is fun and it doesn't take you out of your power fantasy of being Batman. Right? Because they wouldn't have put it in, they would not have even touched the Batmobile, and that's a reason that it wasn't in the first 2 games in a way that the player could control it. They wouldn't have touched the Batmobile if they weren't sure that they can make you still feel like it's a power fantasy. And the way that they do that in Arkham Knight, which I love, is the Batmobile firstly feels like a fucking impenetrable tank.
Looks like one too.
You barely ever get in a situation where it's like GTA, where, okay, I hit this jump awkwardly and now my car is stuck in a wall and I can't do anything about it, because the Batmobile has like so many methods of you controlling yourself, like with the battle mode and stuff, and they've made almost everything that you can touch in the environment destructible. Even the corners of some buildings, are destructible. So if you hit a corner improperly, it still doesn't take you out of it. It still doesn't remove your immersion, because it breaks that part of the building and it like shatters into stone and stuff, which feels really good. It looks really good to watch, and it doesn't take me out of being in the Batmobile, because that was one thing that I was really majorly afraid of when I heard that they were putting the Batmobile in the game, is like, can they handle that properly? Because if it is a GTA situation where I crash into a wall when I'm doing a car chase and I fuck up, I'm not going to feel like Batman, because Batman wouldn't do that, right? That's the whole point of it.
But they can't take control away from you either, so
exactly.
It's kind of, you're stuck.
The only other the way that they've taken control away from the player before was they used the Batmobile in the first game as like a cinematic thing where it only shows up in a cutscene. And I was totally okay with that, because also it doesn't make sense to be using the Batmobile in the Asylum, where there's like not much to drive around.
That's why I thought the scope was so perfect in the Asylum, because they didn't have to mess with the things that make you kind of questionably Batman.
Yeah, that's true. But
you can't frame every game like that, so I get
exactly. And on top of that, people do want to. I would love a game that pulled off a Batman game perfectly, where it wasn't in some like oversimplified world where it's Gotham City, but all of the good people have left, so, I want to deal with civilians, I want to do all those things, but it's really hard to design a game like that, and I think, honestly, it might be impossible.
No, it's not impossible. They have to do it like L.A. Noire.
Even in L.A. Noire, though, the thing is, when you put it in a player's hand, he will learn how to exploit it. And I know L.A. Noire did a similar thing, where if you're driving into people, they will even like buggy glitch. Yeah, well, that too.
That's also
sometimes.
an option for Batman.
And that's not.
You could fail the mission.
Yeah, but that's not good. That's never fun. That's like Assassin's Creed, where like sometimes I want to go on a killing spree, and it's like, oh, if you kill one more civilian, it's gonna desync you. It's like, all right, well, that's. Whatever, fine, I guess.
No, it's not fun. It's just a solution to the problem.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is Rocksteady, I think, is only concerned with fun solutions to the problem. They don't want to take away your... They don't want to take away your autonomy, while also not allowing you to do things that are out of character for Batman.
Instead of tasing them, how about he grappling hooks them up to the nearest wall?
That'd be cool, too, yeah.
I think that actually would have been more reasonable to see that.
Maybe, yeah. But that would require more physics, right? Because those grappling hooks actually use physics. So
it would be like draw a point on, or find the nearest wall, draw a point on it, and then connect the character to that wall.
Yeah, right. No, I mean they could do that, but I mean the line itself is physics enabled. So.
That wouldn't have to be. It could just be a static line that is drawn.
Maybe. I would like that too. That would be pretty cool. But yeah, I don't know. I think for the most part they do a good job of it. The
physics on the poles looked weird to me, I have to say, when you're knocking over poles and destructible stuff.
A lot of it does
look cheap.
A lot of it probably does when you're looking at it, but I'll tell you, when you're playing the game, when you're in the Batmobile with like a car chase or something like that, or you're just driving around, you're spending like all of your concentration watching this fucking badass Batmobile flying around the city. So like you're the only thing that you're seeing of the destruction is very peripheral. So it
it's not a real knock to the game. It's just sort of, if we're looking at the idealized perfect Batman game, that's a thing that maybe I would have addressed.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing is how would you do if you did a world where all the bad guys weren't the only ones in the city? How would you do the Batmobile? Like, is Batman just gonna roll over civilian cars and shit and knock people out as he's
Yeah,
driving
that's
by?
the lucky thing we get in movies, right? Like they get to address all of those situations individually, whereas in a game we don't.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and to the LA Noire point, where like if you drove near a civilian, they would like even glitch so that they'd leap like 20 feet to
Yeah, I
dodge
know.
out of the way of your car. But I found a way to exploit the game and run people over.
Wedge them into a wall.
Yeah, that's all you gotta do. You gotta wedge them into a wall, and then you can run them over and kill them. So like so people will find those exploits, and
But it's about role playing, though. It's not about exploiting it. Then
but
you're trying to go out of your way. If you want to play the
Yeah.
game as intended, you don't necessarily do that. And they went kind of above and beyond to make sure that you didn't accidentally.
but that's the point. Like that's what they've done. That's been like their design philosophy with every Arkham game. If you've played the series, is they want you to feel like Batman, and anything that Batman does, like in the game, the player character as Batman, he never you can never really do anything that
Yep.
makes you feel too terribly not like Batman. Even when you're fucking around and stuff. Like there are minor things where you can fuck around and look silly. Like I do this cape dance where I just spam B over and over again. He just capes back and forth in like the police
Capes.
station. Yeah, he just like cape stuns like nothing in the air, and he looks ridiculous. And you know
Yeah.
there's but I still appreciate that more than Rocksteady saying like, okay, XB and right trigger doesn't work in this area, you know, which they do from time to time do that as well. But
Well, for the sake of cinematics, sometimes you've got to.
yes, yeah. So
I think the next step for Batman is to go full on simulation, because the one thing I think is a problem for me still that sort of breaks my immersion is that Batman doesn't go on these like 25-hour crime fighting sprees where he never stops and goes to bed,
yeah.
and like he gets the shit beaten out of him like thousands of times and still just keeps going. The part of the thing is he's still a mortal human being,
Yeah.
and I think it would be kind of interesting to frame this in such a way that you get days and nights and broken up story arcs.
Yes and
Gives you
no.
a little bit more permanence to it.
I think Rocksteady is more on the Aristotle school of thought,
Okay.
which is that stories are more interesting if they take place over a shorter span of time.
Yeah, but it's this weird dilution, like a time dilation effect, right? There's
Yeah.
no way that we're seeing this story happen in real time, yet it is.
Yeah, Gotham Nighttime apparently takes place over the course of like 30 hours. So
But even
Yeah.
if it wasn't just about the nighttime, all the events that took place in it couldn't have happened in one night. They imply
Yeah.
they don't in several ways.
I think that's just another suspension of disbelief type of thing.
And that's one of the lines where I'd prefer not to have to draw it there if I have my ideal. That's all.
Right,
I'm just
right.
talking about ideals. I'm not saying the game's not fun the way it is.
Mhm.
But I prefer a gameplay loop that is a little bit more immersive in that we get to actually experience a few moments as Bruce Wayne, and maybe we get to have some interactions with people we're not punching.
Oh, I totally agree.
The game is always punching.
But
It's always.
But that's at the same time, that's one of the things that I think is really good about the Arkham series is Rocksteady really knows pacing.
Okay.
I think the pacing of the Arkham games is among the best as far as we're in an era now where I think all AAA games, or most of them at least, understand pacing to a level that didn't exist when I was a kid, where pacing was like, you know, at least in 3D games when it first started, like people just didn't really understand pacing very well. Whereas in the Arkham games, there is always shit. Like there is like you are always moving, always doing some shit, and everything feels like there is like it's high value, high like important shit to do.
But
and
isn't
the
that
pacing
right
is
there
really
something
good.
that dilutes it? If you're always moving and everything is high value,
One could
then
argue
is
that, yeah, but
nothing high value.
but at the same time, like that sort of allows you to suspend your disbelief as far as the one night thing is concerned.
I'd
you know.
rather have like 3 to 5 really important plot points and then a bunch of really minute ones that break those up. because it puts more value on the ones when they're, important. And you could also have some characterization, which I don't really believe the Arkham games ever have had much of.
No, actually, they do quite a bit of. I mean, I think Arkham Knight, especially, based on.
You start out as Batman punching, and you end the game as Batman punching more stuff. That's the whole game. You just get powers, which I understand that Metroidvania is a thing, but that's not really characterization. It's just building on abilities.
Well, I think they do it through the story, though, is the main thing. I mean, I think the story in the Arkham games, especially past Asylum.
I'll defer to you. If you think they do, then I'll give them that credit.
Yeah, no, I honestly think that the stories, the Batman stories that are told in the Arkham games, past Asylum, because Asylum, while it was cool, the story wasn't like super terribly important in that. Like in that game, it was just like, okay, the Asylum's fucked up, Batman's got to put all this shit back together. But
it was about the environments and exploration, really.
Right, yeah. In Arkham City, it's way more about the story of what's going on, why this is happening, and what this means for Batman. Like, specifically, like, how does Batman deal with these situations ethically? And I think, in these cases, these are some of the best Batman stories ever told, is these Arkham games. For real. Like, I've read a lot of Batman comics. Really, these are so well written, these games, and it makes sense too, because they hired like half the team that worked on Batman the Animated Series, and they hired comic book writers and all these fucking people who have been a part of the Batman universe for so long, and they've consulted and made this like a game that really feels like you're in the Batman universe. And what's so cool about it is they take elements from like Nolan's universe, in that it sort of brings Batman a bit down to earth in a way, in that he's not like, at least the character designs on most of the villains and a lot of the bad guys and stuff like that, and it kind of makes it real in a really not real world, which is really cool. So I don't know. I think the story is fantastic, and especially in Arkham Knight, I really think the story is fucking brilliant in that game so far. It's really, really, really enthralling. Like, it's really interesting. I just want to know what's gonna happen next in the story. If I'm right about, because the whole premise of Arkham Knight is you don't know who this character, the Arkham Knight, is, right? And you're trying to figure that out over the course of the game.
Okay. I thought you were the Arkham Knight.
Well, that's the yeah. You're the Dark Knight, but you're not necessarily the Arkham Knight.
I don't understand these qualities that keep being put on Batman. He's a fucking dude in a suit. Why do we have to keep calling him shit?
It's the epithet for Batman. He's got loads of them, like the world's greatest detective.
He's got so many.
Yeah, there's like a bunch of stuff like that. But that's just Batman. Like the whole point of Batman in like his lore is that he's a legend. He's a legendary figure. There actually was this comic that I'm about to read called Gotham Black and White, which is like a bunch of different comic book writers and artists got together to make this book, which was a collection of various like strange Batman stories. Like Neil Gaiman even wrote one of them. And it's like, different legends of Batman that are like, maybe people heard that's what Batman did, or maybe it's an alternate universe. Yeah, oh yeah.
The legend as opposed to the man, because I prefer the man.
I think the man is interesting, but the point is that like there's a lot of Batman that doesn't stick traditionally to like a linear story. And I'm saying that, I realize, take what I say there with a grain of salt, because the Arkham games stick very closely to Batman's linear story progression of the things that have happened to him over the course. And this is sort of why I'm even talking about this, because in regards to the Arkham Knight, I'm pretty sure I know who the Arkham Knight is, because there's loads of foreshadowing for it to be this character. Which I'm a little bit afraid of, because it might be one of those things where casual Batman fans they'll be like, who the fuck is that? Like they're gonna have the big reveal, and they'll be like, who the fuck is this
That's on them,
person?
isn't it?
Yes and no, but I think that is also on Rocksteady, because
Well, okay, if
there
you're
are
doing
many
a big
times
reveal, you're obligated to put it into the arc. Then,
yes,
is what you're saying, yeah.
because like, you know, Rocksteady, it's all well and good to know to actually know the Batman lore, but you have to execute it in a way that people who don't understand the story, like previously, who haven't read any of the comics, will understand it, right? Like,
Especially
you
when you're
have
trying to
do
make
that.
a mass media like effort, right? 'Cause
Exactly,
they
yeah.
want to reach new people. With
And just to be a good game, just frankly, like, honestly, because I mean, they're a good game should be, you know, encompass itself. You should be able to play it.
Self-standing.
Yes, exactly. So I think that
you
is a
don't
mark
know.
of a good game. So
You don't know 100% yet if it's going to be that character, so
I don't. Yes,
you can't say yet if they've messed up there.
That's true. And I haven't seen the reveal either. I mean, there could
be more exposition that explains it.
Yeah, there might be. I mean, they've already shown that there was a flashback scene and there's exposition on one character, so the reason they might have put that in is to set up that flashbacks are possible within the scope of the game. They've actually done 2 flashbacks now, so I think they are probably setting up that there will be a flashback to explain who this character is, if it's the person that I'm thinking of, which I'm pretty fucking sure it is, based on a lot of the stuff in the game. So yeah, so I mean, I hope they do the reveal right, but honestly, they've set up the rest of the story has just been so brilliantly written, honestly. And then, of course, it has Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill as Batman and the Joker, who...
The day that Mark Hamill isn't available for the Joker is the day that apparently nobody gives a shit about this series anymore.
Yeah, no, really. Like, they had Troy Baker as the Joker in Batman Arkham Origins, who, I won't lie, did a fine job. He did a pretty good job of replicating Hamill's delivery. But, I mean, that kind of just shows you a little bit, right? That he has to replicate Hamill's delivery to make it a recognizable Joker. Mm-hmm. Like, in my mind... I've said this on my stream, I'll say it here now. When I read Batman comics, when I read Batman, I hear Kevin Conroy. When I read the Joker, I hear Mark Hamill. I just do. That's in my head, that's who's saying those lines. So
they got you then.
I mean, it was, they knew that they had to get Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill for this game. For the first game, I mean, from Arkham Asylum. And it was such a good decision to do that. They're brilliant again in this game. Mark Hamill is brilliant again as the Joker, as he always is. I guess I won't spoil the story, but there is...
don't spoil the story.
There is an aspect that makes the Joker interesting in this game.
Alright, well, okay, on the other hand, though, it was in the trailer and also in the first 10 seconds of gameplay, so I don't know if that really counts as a spoiler.
Well, no, that's not the spoiler part. There's a spoiler part.
Well, it explains why it's the spoiler, doesn't it?
Sort of, yeah. But, yeah, I mean...
Never mind, we don't have to...
It also happens at the end... That spoiler happens at the end of Arkham City, which is also... You know, that was also really well executed. Yeah.
Do you think it's a bad idea to get so attached to certain characters, voice actors, as a fan of the series to, like, really...
Yes.
Yeah, because you're going to set yourself up for disappointment later when they're not available.
I mean, Arkham Origins, yeah. No, totally. It was one of the things, despite the fact that I don't think the game was designed that well, that was one of the things that made me dislike that game. Is it wasn't Mark Hamill. It
doesn't feel legitimate if it's not the people you want.
Yeah. Also, the guy who played Batman. I don't know who played Batman. I don't remember, but like he did a fine job, but he didn't really pull off Kevin Conroy, and they didn't really want him to. Like in Arkham Origins, they wanted to portray an earlier Batman who was more like gritty and angry, and you know, he's just mean, and he's
they should really double down on the gritty, angry Batman, right? Like they haven't gone that road yet.
And you know, another thing about Arkham Origins, I don't feel like shitting all over Arkham Origins, but I guess I do since I'm going to continue to do it. Another thing about Arkham Origins is it really feels like whoever developed the story for that game, watched a whole lot more of Chris Nolan's movies than they did of the animated series or read any of the comic books. That's what it felt like to me.
But wouldn't that be a valid option for them, though?
Yeah, but not in the Arkham games. Like, the Arkham games, they wear their inspirations on their sleeves, for sure. Like, there's multiple references to... I mean, actually in the Arkham Knight game specifically, there are, like, multiple scenes that come from, like, huge graphic novelizations of Batman in the game are, like, main plot points in Arkham Knight. And on top of that, they make references all over the place to different comic series and comic books and arcs that... like, all throughout the entire game, which again, most casual Batman fans probably will, glaze over. They won't, and I don't expect a lot of people to read all of the Batman comics. I just fucking love Batman so much that I do, but those references are nice.
A lot without it. It sounds like you're missing a ton of the story if you don't know those references.
No, not really. I mean, they're usually casual things, the... Alfred at some point will be like, this sounds like it'll be a long Halloween, which is it's a Jeff Leb.
Just paying lip service to something.
Exactly, yeah. Or like, you'll be walking through GCPD and one of the thugs in the pen will be like, I will break you tonight. Is the night I'll break you, Batman, which is like a Nightfall reference. So I mean, there's stuff like that are just like little tiny, like, hey, do you like Batman as much as we do? Here, we put this in for you, and that's cool.
It sounds so silly, but like, why do the thugs even fight Batman? There's no reason. Like, they're all just loitering around, and Batman shows up, and they're like, oh shit, it's Batman! And like, one or two of them will try to run, but usually they just group up in a big circle, and then all start fighting you. It's like, this is Batman. Do you not know? You just said you're exclaiming, oh shit, it's Batman. What does that mean to you?
That's another thing, is actually, I like Arkham Knight. This is again, I'm gonna shit on Origins, but the whole point... if the viewers have watched my stream, they know that when people sub, I say beat up llamas and loiterers, and the place that loiterers comes from is when I first started my show on Twitch, we did Arkham Origins, and I noted to be a running joke for like years later that all of the like quote-unquote criminals in Arkham Origins were just standing around. They weren't doing anything particularly crime-related. Like, there would just be some dude standing on a roof or, like, standing on a corner, and Batman would just come up and just start beating the shit out of him for no reason, and it was like, Batman, like, you're fighting crime, and, I mean, I guess technically loitering is a crime in a lot of places, but does it really warrant, like, making people not able to walk anymore or stand?
The subtext is, like, they're bad people in his registry, and he knows who they are and what they've done, so he's getting them?
No, in Origins, it's like, in Origins, I think, like, a bunch of dudes escape from Blackgate and take over this area on the... Like, there's a big blizzard, and that's what happens. So they're all bad, but they're not doing anything bad.
Because, like,
in Arkham City,
everyone in the city is bad, then there you go. Have free reign, beat everybody up. But then you get to Gotham, and there's just people actually just standing outside.
Yeah. Well, that's what it felt like in Arkham Origins, is they were all just loitering around, and it was like... Well, Batman's just gonna go kick the shit out of them, break some bones and shit.
Why don't we address that, though?
Well, in Arkham Knight, but see, the thing is, in Arkham Knight, it really doesn't feel that way, because when you encounter, like, groups of thugs on the street, they're usually doing fucked up shit. Like, you'll see them, like, breaking into, into a store, or they're rioting, breaking, like, smashing cars and running around in circles and shit.
I swear I saw you fall onto, like, 4 dudes that were just walking.
I mean, probably, yeah, but a lot of the story segments they'll have just dudes just standing around, because that's like an objective that Batman has to take to do it. But
okay, that's a tangent. My first question though was, why do they fight Batman?
Yeah, no,
there's no explanation there, right? It's
because it's a video game, yeah. Well, I mean, I guess in the comics they do too, but yeah, no, it's pretty. I mean. Again, this kind of goes into the thinking that Batman is like a legend, and they actually go over this in The Dark Knight as well, where you see just a shot of two criminals. They're about to, like, I think one's gonna give drugs or something to the other one, and then he looks up and he sees the bat signal is up in the sky, and he's like, "No, man, I'm out." And the guy's like, "Oh, come on, man! It's more likely that you'll win Lotto than you'll ever see Batman." And that's sort of the thing, right? Is that thugs probably, they probably heard of Batman, and he's supposed to be the scary story that thugs tell their children.
But for every individual thug, they've never seen him until they do.
Probably, yeah. And then they're like, all right, well, clearly there's like 20 of us, and it's just some dude in a leather daddy suit. So let's go fight him. And then they get the shit kicked out of them.
Yeah.
So
it's terrifying
it's a
too that
thing. Yeah.
the entire Gotham City is basically subject to the whims of what Batman believes is illegal.
Oh yeah,
so,
that's.
If they had legislation that one day pot is illegal and the next day pot isn't illegal, like 2 days ago, you got all your limbs broken because Batman knew that pot was illegal.
Well,
does he now change his mind?
Well, no, see, that's the thing, and that's that's another reason why I love the character of Batman, is he doesn't follow exactly the rule of law specifically. Like, he follows what is right and what is wrong according to Batman. And a lot of the comics have done a really great job of exploring that aspect of him, where it's like, well, Batman's kind of a fascist. Even the Dark Knight does it, right? With the Lucius Fox thing. In Batman's mind, most of the time, the ends justify the means, even if he's doing something that's really, really fucked up, like in the Dark Knight. And I guess kind of spoilers here, but I mean, if you haven't seen the Dark Knight, fucking watch it. Stop watching this video, go watch it. Where he uses Lucius Fox's sonar device to spy on literally everyone in Gotham, and Fox is like, "All right,
yeah,
I'll help you this one night, but after this, we're done. This is too fucked up." And and then Batman rewards him.
They phrase it in sort of like a whimsical way in the movie too. Like, I don't think they really probe how dark that actually is. If it was a government doing it,
yes,
obviously.
They handle it very lightly in the film, but I mean, they have to in a lot of those.
Well, but that would have been a great moment for some political satire that I think they chose not to indulge in.
I agree, and it's sort of, oh, god damn it, man, my computer keeps making this doo-doop sound like it's recording my voice from something, and I don't know where it's from.
Doo-doop is like when Windows loses a connection on USB.
No, it's like doo-doop.
Right.
It's not the USB sound. Anyway,
okay.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, comics deal with that a lot, where they kind of go into like, all right, Batman, like, you're a cool dude and all, and you are doing the right thing, but you're going about it in a really fascist and fucked up way because you think the ends justify the means, when we're not so sure that it does. And that's part of what it makes Batman a really interesting character. And actually, they go into that kind of thing in Arkham Knight and Arkham City, but more so in Arkham Knight, which is what's cool.
The whole goal of Joker is to pervert Batman's sense of justice. He's the anarchist that tries to turn the world upside down to the degree that he doesn't know which side is up anymore.
Yeah, well, that's what makes the Joker and Batman such, like, when you think of a superhero and supervillain combo, you think of Batman and the Joker, right? There's no other two supervillains, like a supervillain and superhero matchup, that really just strikes perfectly, other than, like, I don't know, Walter White and Gustavo Fring, like that, or like Sherlock and Moriarty, that really...
the Sherlock, well, you know what? They're all pretty much in shades of gray, aren't they?
That's the kind of point of those characters, is those characters are foils, and that's what makes them really interesting, is the Joker and Batman, they're basically the same guy, just one went left, the other went right.
But they're not even that far away from each other, really.
That's also the thing, yeah. Is they're
like
not
fucking
that
Superman.
different.
That's why he's so bland. Superman is literally white, and his opponents are literally black, and that's lame.
It is. I agree. I totally agree.
And that's boring.
That's what makes
they fight by punching, and that's the end.
That's why Batman is way more interesting to me. And again, in Arkham Knight, that's what's so cool about Arkham Knight, is they're dealing with that issue in that game. Is like, is Batman right? Like, you're playing as Batman, and you're doing it the way that Batman would do it, but you have to, you have to stop and think, like, okay, well, Batman is achieving his goals, but is it right? Is he right? Because he's right in Batman's mind. In Batman's mind, this is more important. I have to do this.
Yeah.
But is it right? Is it morally is it founded in moral fortitude? You know, and that's what's interesting about the character, and that's why I love Batman, is because it goes into that. And another reason why I like the Doctor actually as well is because the Doctor usually, at least in the new series, goes through those types of dilemmas a lot, where it's like, okay, this is right, but it's my right. It's not necessarily like, is my right the right? Do I have the absolute code of morals and ethics?
Am I God?
Yeah,
do I decree these?
Am I God? Like, do I get to choose these things, or you know, or am I like a totally fucked up asshole for even considering it? And then, you know, Batman goes through those dilemmas as well all the time. Although Batman himself, Batman does go through the dilemmas himself, but a lot of the other characters are usually there to ground him and be like, okay, dude, this is wrong. You should not be doing this. You know?
I want to say real quick, too, before I forget to say it, for anybody watching, like, I'm not so naive as to not understand why the Joker and Batman are an interesting combination. I'm just sort of delving into this because it's got kind of a fun topic to talk about, honestly.
Yeah, totally. I've had multiple episodes of miniseries where I spend like an hour just talking about Batman because I really love the character. He is definitely my favorite superhero.
I'm not a super fan of the Batman series, but I have spent many hours dealing with it in various ways, so it's not like I'm new to the characters either.
Yeah. It's, and again, this is why I totally respect the Arkham Knight storyline so far, is that they are touching on that aspect of Batman where it's like, is this cool? Like, this is, like, Batman, what you're doing right now, that's not cool. Like, that's not, you should not be doing it that way. That's fucked up. Like, yes, you will achieve your ends this way, faster and more efficiently, but it's wrong. You're wrong.
When we were talking about the man versus the legend before, it started to make me wonder if maybe that's why I'm not so interested in most superheroes, is because we spend so much time in the legend area, where all of the canon that makes up a person's background is kind of just this soup of different ethical dilemmas and series of punching people and grappling hooks and shit. And it's not like this happened on day 273 of his life, this happened on day 274.
Right.
It's just sort of all of this stuff you can pull from and assemble any series of timelines. And for me, that it sort of makes me less interested, because I can't really see the character evolve as well when you can just draw from this endless series of things.
Well, you'd probably like Marvel more then. Also, you'd probably like the New 52 more then, because DC has recently kind of reworked their entire continuity, because DC specifically has always kind of been like that, because like it's been around for so long. I mean, Batman was made by Bob Kane and Bill Finger in like the 1930s. So
is there a timeline, like an actual legit timeline for Batman, or is it like there's 7 timelines that you could pick interchangeably if you?
Well, in the New 52, yes, that is the whole point. Is they've gone over, they've redone all of the continuity and started it over, and there is going to be a set story for every hero kind of thing. And I haven't read any of the New 52 actually, although I heard it's very good. As far as Batman is concerned, there is a baseline continuity. Like, there is, you know, the Harvey Dent storyline always happened. The Robins always happened, and Nightwing and stuff like that, and now with, like, Damian Wayne and all that shit, and the stuff with Batgirl. But those are all a collection of various stories and stuff that happened over the course of, like, you know, 100 years of Batman.
Yeah.
And, it, you know, they all fit together, not in a very linear way. A lot of people tackle them in different ways, and that's sort of what I actually do find interesting about Batman in that way, in that there are a lot of reading a Batman graphic novel, you learn what things have happened and what things haven't yet and stuff like that.
Yeah.
A lot of the times
it feels like those characters, or specifically Batman, is so at the whims of what's fashionable in terms of what was the character before, what do we want him to be today?
Yes.
And then we go in response to what it was today and what is it going to be tomorrow, and we just keep revolving around, is he gritty, is he humorous, is he whimsical, is he mysterious, is he legendary, and we just keep going in this big circle.
Yeah.
But none of those things are conducive to a single cohesive character anymore. It's just putting a magnifying glass to the culture of the time that it's created again and again and again.
The thing about Batman really is if you're reading the comics or graphic novels or series, is you kind of have to take it as, okay, when I'm reading this writer's series on Batman, this is taking place in this writer's universe of Batman.
Right, I just wish there was one universe.
Well, again, like I said, New 52 is that.
Right.
So that is something that they have. I guess they realize that a lot of people have a concern with that, because I totally understand that concern. Like I understand the need for a continuity. Marvel has always been that way, where they have kept a continuity going, like this happened and this happened and this happened and this happened, and that's how this character's story has progressed from time, and it's been very measured. Whereas DC has always kind of been very loosey-goosey in their telling of the stories and stuff.
I wonder, though, if it's even possible at this point. Because if you told me today that the new continuity of Batman has Batman die, well, no, he's not dead, so I don't care about your cohesion anymore. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's it. But again, that's something that I like about Batman. It's like, I could read a graphic novel about, I actually just recently finished reading Batman Year 100, which was about 100 years after Batman. There's a new Batman and a new crime to solve, and there's a new problem, and this new Batman is dealing with it. And it was pretty good, actually. I liked Batman Year 100. I recently read it, and in that universe of Batman, Batman was solving all of his crimes in the 60s. And this story was taking place. I mean, I think it was written in the 80s, and it takes place in 2015 or something. So it's taking place now, but all of Batman's shit happened in the 60s. And at this point in the story, nobody really remembers Batman anymore. He's sort of like a legend that some people remember, kind of, and nobody really knows about who he was or what he did and stuff like that. And the characters are trying to resolve that. And then there's this story arc of what happened to all of the supervillains and all the superheroes and stuff. And this new Batman is uncovering it. And then you have something like Dark Knight Returns, which is Frank Miller's what happens when Batman's not perpetually 32 years old. When
are we going to get to the future society where it's 2250 and we're looking back at 1995 when Batman used to be alive and what the legends were of Batman?
Oh, they've done that before, yeah.
Fuck me.
They also did in Kingdom Come, they did.
They're so obsessed with this character.
They also did Kingdom Come where I think it was really good. It takes place years after the modern, or what the timeline in which we're concerned with the DC universe of the Justice League is around and Batman's doing his shit in Gotham and all that stuff. And this takes place years after that, after they've won. The Justice League won. They beat all the supervillains. There's no more supervillains anymore. They did it. The war's over.
Now they have to cannibalize each other.
And and now it's what happened. What happened with the Flash is that he can't stop moving anymore. No, he became like a racist old grandpa. He's telling all the people to get off his porch. No, the Flash, he accelerated to the point where he can't stop moving anymore, and now people just see a red blur move around the city from time to time, and that's the Flash, and there's no crime because there can't be, because the Flash is always moving around. And then they show Gotham. Yeah, and then they show Gotham, and what Batman evolved to is, since he's too old to be Batman now, he has these automated drone robots that just police the city, and they're Batman's robots, and he deals with crime that way. Which again, is something that I love about the Batman story, is that when people show who Batman is and what he's become, or what he becomes in the future and stuff is like he's a total fucking fascist asshole. Like he's made like a police state of drones that police the city.
How did he take over the actual police force?
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Because isn't that a point of contention too? When he decided today's the day I unleash the drones into the city, the police force says, "Okay, Batman, you've had enough, bro."
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they go and they shoot him, and that's the end of Batman.
Yeah, well, you know that
Killed
happens
by the city that made him.
That type of story happens in a lot of Batman comics too, as well. So, you know.
But this is why I'm so confused about the whole thing, because it can be basically whatever your imagination says Batman is. There's already 5 stories about that.
Yes and no, though, is the thing. Like most of the time, when you tell a story, like for instance, in the Arkham series, while it's its own story and it basically is its own universe, a lot of the main sticking points that are important to Batman's story that have happened over the course of, 100 years, like specifically from the 80s rebirth of Batman, where they actually went back in and they said, okay, let's bring it back to what Bob Kane designed originally.
The same. It's like what, 5 supervillains every time. It's always Joker and Scarecrow and Two-Face.
Well, those are a lot of
Ivy.
Those are the main rogues gallery, yeah. But Batman has a huge rogues gallery. And
I know he does,
but that's really interesting about.
Don't they prune it down for accessibility every so often, and then we get back to the main few? Or is that not a thing?
Yes and no. I mean, the Arkham games were always very good about that, where they'll introduce supervillains that aren't necessarily supervillains that a casual Batman viewer will. Or reader will recognize. They'll bring out stuff like the Mad Hatter in Arkham City, which was really good. They did a really good Mad Hatter section.
So Mr. Freeze in particular, he doesn't always show up, but sometimes he does.
Yeah. Yes.
So he's not like one of the main group, right?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, the thing, Mr. Freeze is actually a really
complicated.
Mr. Freeze is a really interesting character because he's really, even though you had that shitty movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger playing Mr. Freeze, where they totally made him into a cartoony supervillain, in the animated series and in the comics, Mr. Freeze isn't really a traditional supervillain because he doesn't just do shit because he's evil or he wants money or anything like that. His main motivation by doing anything that he does that is bad is he's trying to save his wife, because his wife Nora is locked away in cryogenic stasis with a horrible disease or whatever, something like that, and he's trying to save her, and sometimes he needs a machine, or he needs money, or he needs something like that, and he is another character that's kind of like Batman, who's like, in his mind, the ends always justify the means for Mr. Freeze, and his ends are always to save his wife, his one love, Nora, and he wants to save her, and he's gonna do whatever it takes to do that. And Batman is always at odds with him, and at the same time sort of respects him in a way, because it's like, well, okay, I mean, you have a noble goal, even though your means are pretty fucked up.
I don't think there's ever been a reasonable depiction of him then that makes him seem human.
Well,
the very name Mr. Freeze by itself already starts to get off into that realm of silly.
Well, okay. Firstly, I will say that you probably never watched the animated series, and you should. You should actually watch Heart of Ice, which is the part where they...
I have, but only passively, so I don't remember it at all.
Well, they introduced Mr. Freeze in a it actually won an Emmy, I think. The episode Heart of Ice, which is the one about Mr. Freeze, because it kind of does humanize him. It makes him into that character where Batman is like, okay, well, I mean, I want to help you. Actually, Bruce Wayne does end up, like, there are many story arcs where Bruce Wayne tries to help Victor Freeze, because Batman has to stop.
Is his last
Mr.
name
Freeze.
Actually Freeze?
Yeah, it's Victor Freeze. And that was the second thing that I was gonna say, is part of the thing with Batman is a lot of the really famous characters in the Rogues Gallery were invented in the shitty era of Batman. Because during the Silver Age of superheroes, or maybe it was the Golden Age, I'm not sure. Either way, around the 50s and 60s, DC saw the up-and-comers of various other, comic books and superheroes that they originally created, and they realized that they had to compete. And the way that they would compete is they turned away from the old pulp noir type of characters that where superheroes spawned from, because superheroes kind of spawned out of, especially Batman specifically, spawned out of that era of these pulp noir characters like the Spider and stuff like that they were kind of like anti-heroes, and they're dark and gritty, and they're mostly human with some kind of superpower, twist on them sometimes, but or like the Shadow, for instance. And Batman was spawned out of that era, and DC wanted to consolidate, make their main properties popular and the ones that people would buy and recognize, and they also had to tone them down a bit so that they could be sold to kids. So
the battle was always, let's make everything into Superman, because that one's popular, and make it as freaking shallow as possible so we can sell it to everyone.
That's exactly the case. And so in that era, you had a lot of these characters in Batman that were just super duper gimmicky. Like, they were just like, you had like joke names of stuff, like Edward Nigma is the Riddler, or Enigma. You would have Victor Freeze is Mr. Freeze, and it's spelled Fries,
Somehow I can take Edward Nigma more seriously because he's just a ridiculous character as himself.
Right, yeah.
But if Mr. Freeze is supposed to be a serious dude with an actual personality, calling him Mr. Freeze seems silly. But I get now why.
Even Two-Face, even Harvey Dent as Two-Face, like the whole gimmick with Two-Face, he was created in that era as well, and the whole gimmick with him was that he always had to have two of something. There would have to be one type of thing and another type of something else. But then after that time, and there were young artists and young writers coming up that were like, that era was pretty shitty for Batman, and Batman was like a way cooler character when Bob Kane and Bill Finger created him, when he was like dark and brooding, and he was the world's greatest detective, and he didn't have Robin, and he just he was the guy
frustrating that they're so subject to the whims of the culture at the moment of this character being created that it could have been a better story from the point of origin.
Yeah.
Instead, we had to go through this big cycle to get back to realizing they had such a good idea at the start and kind of botched it.
Yeah, well, that sort of just happens. But the thing is, though, in that 80s like renaissance of Batman, where they reworked him when like Jeff Leb and Frank Miller started writing Batman, in that reformation of bringing Batman back to his roots, you actually got some cool things where they expanded on the stories of these gimmicky characters that were silly and over the top and created in that 60s era, and that sort of really brought more character to Batman, because in the early days it was like I said, very pulpy. It was very it's real crimes, real criminals, mafia, stuff like that. Batman's dealing with that kind of shit. But honestly, and you don't see this as much in the Chris Nolan movies, because that almost goes back to that pulpy type of thing where no one's superpowered in that universe. It's just supposed to be a very real world. But Batman, honestly, I think grew greatly in that 80s renaissance where, Batman does have to grapple with real crime, but he's also in a very not real world, and he has to deal with these supervillains in the way that Batman can. And that kind of humanizes him and makes him a more interesting character, because he's just a dude. Like, he's a really smart, really strong, really fast and athletic dude, but he's just a dude. So putting him against these superpowered supervillains that... and then they expanded those characters and made them more interesting and gave them more interesting backstories. And, there were loads of stories about... I mean, the Harvey Dent story is told 100 times in... so much so that they even did it in The Dark Knight. Because it's a really interesting story where Bruce Wayne and Harvey Dent are friends, and then through you know, his story of how he became Two-Face changes from comic book to comic book, but it's essentially the same, where half of his body or face is melted off, and then he becomes Two-Face and snaps.
Bad crossover, please.
Yeah, well, basically, like, that's sort of, and Harvey Dent is a really interesting character, because because that's another one of that's another one of those arcs, and the reason that it's told over and over again is because it's one of those arcs that really humanizes Batman, where Batman tries so desperately to do the right thing, but he fails, and it's sort of like a Sisyphusian thing, where because it's told over and over and over again, it's like this Sisyphusian, like, dilemma that Batman's always in, where he always, in the comics, he's always trying something different and trying to save Harvey Dent, but he never can, and no matter what the story is, and you know, and that's a big sticking point in Batman's life, that he failed Harvey Dent, because he did. That's in every story. That's the thing, is that Batman and Bruce Wayne both failed Harvey Dent, and that's why he faced him. And hey, that's another interesting storyline in Dark Knight Returns, which is Batman when he's not perpetually 32 years old, when he's an old man, in Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, where we see that after Bruce Wayne hung up the cowl and is no longer Batman, he's still in Harvey Dent's life, and he's trying to save him by he's paid for all of his surgeries and stuff, and he's tried various means of rehabilitation. So it just kind of shows that's one of those things that Batman always regrets.
That's
He'll always
the
regret.
true superhero trait of Batman, is he has unending finances.
That's yes, yeah. He has a literally unlimited supply of money. So.
Don't you think, though, that maybe these days we've gotten a little too far into the realm of that Batman is defined by his gadgets over his actual personality?
Yes, and I think the Arkham games are definitely one of the main sticklers in that area.
But it's a gameplay conceit that they kind of need those to carry the game along.
That's what I was going to say, is that it's unfortunate, but that's sort of just how the game is, and that based on how they've designed the game, they have to kind of take it that way. But yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean,
kind of an overlap with Iron Man. I'd rather just have them be two separate characters with two separate identities, and Batman's known for his ingenuity, and Tony Stark's known for his money.
Well, the thing is,
gadgets.
If you read the comics, though, like, most of the time, Batman, like, a lot of times,
two separate universes before I get that fucking comic.
Right, yeah. the comics always kind of treat gadgets a lot of the time, except for the main ones that Batman has on his utility belt, as sort of like a Deus Ex Machina type of thing. Never as, like, this is how Batman is getting shit done. Usually, Batman is dealing with his problems with his fists, and that's, you know, that's fine. He doesn't go too
application of his fists is, I think, what we want to believe.
Well,
right?
yes, yeah, no, yeah. That's right.
He applies pressure in the places that are necessary, and it's more about not the pressure, but where he applies it. That's what defines the character.
Yes, yeah, and you know, who and how and whatnot.
And that's what makes really the matchups between Batman and the supervillains interesting. It's because he's really not powerful at all aside from his mind.
Right.
Whereas the things he's going up against
else,
sometimes actually have things that don't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, somebody with a freaking laser that's made of ice, or, you know, random, like, fucking bushes grow. What is her deal again? What is she poisons you?
She's weird. Well, she doesn't. She actually.
I just realized I don't know what she does.
Her main thing, like the main thing that she does in most of the comics that involve Poison Ivy, is she can charm people. So she can mind control them and bend them to her will with spores or whatever.
Does Catwoman seduce people too?
Well, not in the same way. Like, Catwoman seduces people because she's, like, fine as hell and a badass, but Poison Ivy literally mind controls you, so, you know, there's that. Her main thing is she cares more about plants than she does humans, so she's like the exaggerated environmental terrorist type archetype character.
Okay.
Yeah, that's her main deal. Again,
so,
another one.
Yeah, all the powers are rooted in some reality, though. I mean, Scarecrow, it's based on chemicals.
Fear toxin, yeah.
And Poison Ivy, I guess, also based on chemicals. Science.
Bane, based on chemicals as well.
All right, so there's a theme here.
Yeah.
These are the physical embodiments of the sins of the city, I guess.
Oh yeah, no, totally. That's definitely the case. Yes.
All right, see, this is a theme that I'm coming up with on the fly. I mean, yes, I've considered some of this stuff, but I've never really thought about it in poetic terms, I guess.
Yes. Well, and that's, again, this is what I mean, is that in the 80s they expanded on that stuff. Like, they took the gimmicks and turned them around to make them poetic and make them metaphorical and stuff, and that made them more interesting.
Do they each have their own space, though, or do they just mostly overlap?
What do you mean?
In terms of their poetic license, like, they all kind of come to the same head.
Sort of, I guess. I'm not fully understanding what you're meaning, to be honest with you.
I'm having trouble describing it, too. Like, a lot of them seem to be rooted in, I am some sort of chemical-created mutation or abnormality, I guess.
Right.
But it's fueled by some psychological ego or, some level of a divergence from what we would consider a psychological normality. Whereas Batman's got his own counterbalance to that.
Well, he's insane as well.
He's insane, but in a controlled way?
He's insane, but... Well, yes
Sometimes?
and no. Like...
Yeah, see, now I'm approaching
a lot of the characters in the Batman universe, like, go over this kind of thing as well, where they're like, you really have to question the sanity of a man who dresses up like a bat and beats supervillains up with his fists. Like, right. there are loads of other ways that you can...
traumatized from his parents dying. We know that part.
Too, yeah, but also he's just kind of crazy. Like, the thing is with Batman is he is sort of just a bit insane. I mean, sort of like, if you look at the modern adaptation depiction of Sherlock Holmes in Sherlock, it's kind of the same idea where, Sherlock's really, really smart, and he's really, he solves crimes and he does good things for the world. But even he in the story says like I'm not a hero. I just do it for me. And that's sort of the thing with Batman too, is like there are loads of other ways that a man with an unlimited amount of income could deal with these problems in Gotham.
Yeah.
Yet he chooses the crazy way. That speaks a little bit about his character.
This goes back to the whole legend thing, though, again. I thought over the years we sort of were intended to become numb to the idea that that's not a rational thought, because we're so used to seeing the Batman iconography around.
Oh,
so
no,
then it sort of just becomes a foregone conclusion that, yeah, this guy becomes Batman because that's what this guy does. And we don't ever question that choice anymore. It's just what he does.
And this is another reason why I love reading Batman comics, is a lot, like most of the comics, honestly, question that. They spend a lot of time questioning that. Because
almost every mainstream media version of a Batman story doesn't. Have you noticed?
Yes, yeah. I like even the Chris Nolan ones, very lightly deal with that type of...
It's like we go from, oh, wait, I'm a guy, to all of a sudden I'm Batman, to now I've got an armory and a fucking technology cave.
Yeah, right.
Like, nobody ever makes that step and goes, wait a minute, why is he doing that thing?
Right, yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the like I said, a lot of the comics delve into that idea where it's like, Bruce, like, there are loads of other ways you could have went about dealing with this situation. Yeah. Maybe this wasn't the most sane. Dressing up in a leather suit, like a spandex fucking bat suit, just because you were kind of afraid of bats as a kid. Maybe that wasn't the sanest thing to do. Like, that, maybe not the most sane thing.
Do you think they'll ever approach a universe where Batman is literally only a metaphor? It's some sort of, like, corporate identity for Bruce Wayne, but it's not actually a man.
The corporate, yeah, actually they did that.
Like, Batman is just an idea, but it never exists anywhere, and he just applies pressure through money or influence.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, there could have been an Elseworld story about that. I mean, like I said, Batman is from like the 1930s, so there's been like almost 100 years of stories written about him.
Oh, I know. It's just when I said the other one about the 2050 version of Batman, you're like, "Oh, that's been made." Maybe they did that idea.
Well,
too.
they did Batman Core, which was
it's a type of metal, isn't it?
It's essentially what it was Batman became an organization, and he decided that his rule of law was, again, in this fascist way, Batman decided that his rule of law was the right rule of law, and what he did is he set up a Batman in, like, every major city all over the globe.
Oh, see, I'm talking about there being no Batman at all.
Yeah, like a metaphorical...
Just, like, he's an idea, but there's no suit, ever.
I don't know.
For anyone.
Maybe. It could be a story. It's not
I don't even know like how that would really work, but I kind of like the idea of it just being about political intrigue instead of there actually being a man who does things.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
It's a possibility. I don't know.
That'd be pretty cool. I'd be into it. I'd read that story. That sounds interesting. Like I said, I'm gonna read that Batman Black and White, which is apparently Neil Gaiman's part is really good.
How about the story where Batman's parents never die?
Oh, they've done that. I forget which one that is, but they did something like that where his parents didn't die, and then
it becomes a family business, and they all become Batman.
Yeah. Yeah, I recently read Batman Earth 1, which is somewhat... Like, in Batman Earth 1, they made it so that Alfred wasn't actually their butler. He was just, like, Thomas Wayne's old war buddy or something. And he's the one that actually trains Batman to become Batman.
I mean, that makes more sense to me, honestly.
Yeah. I actually really didn't like that story, though, because Batman... In that story, Batman's motivations are... to like the only reason he becomes Batman is not because he wants to stop crime, but because he wants to avenge his parents' deaths, which kind of...
I thought that's part of like the underlying neuroses that powers him anyway.
Yes, but it's not his like main conceit, right? Like that is that, but it like his main goal isn't just to like go cash and stop Joe Chill. Like, it's like, okay, like he realizes that it's not Joe Chill that killed his parents, it is the culture of the city that did.
It's Uncle Ben.
Yeah, and all his rice. So, yeah.
Fucking Spider-Man, though.
Yeah.
See, I can actually have this conversation about Batman, but if we started going down this road for Spider-Man, I'd be so out in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I just can't get into that character as much. It doesn't do much for me.
I will say...
No offense to Spider-Man fans, it's just me.
Well, I will say that Spider-Man is probably my second favorite superhero.
Okay.
Partly, again, Spider-Man is another one of those heroes where...
Dude, we can't have the same conversation.
No, I won't go that far into it, but I will say that, like, a lot of people have said this, and I agree with it, where a superhero is only as good as his rogues gallery, right? Like, a superhero is only as good as the villains he fights against. And, in my opinion, the rogues gallery list of, like, best to number 2 is Batman's number 1, and Spider-Man is number 2. I think Spider-Man's villains are the best.
Well, so what happens when you involve the X-Men, then? And then you've got all of the rogues gallery.
Yeah, well, I mean, X-Men is, like, its own entire
X-Men
thing.
is a universe inside of a universe. It's massive.
It is. It is enormous, yeah. They've tried... They have curtailed the continuity on the X-Men because over the years since they integrated them into Marvel, like more specifically where the characters really do exist in the same universe, you know, there's like hundreds of thousands of mutants all over the world, and that was a big problem. So what they did is they did this thing where one of the story arcs had it so that like most of there was some kind of virus that some government company made or something, and they killed off most of the mutants. Yeah, most of the mutants lost their powers. So there's...
Oh, they didn't even kill them. They just lost their powers. Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, there was a whole arc with that. And
see, X-Men was the one growing up that I was the most interested in. Like, I can tell you're fueled by Batman from the very beginning. X-Men was the one that I would have said I felt that way. Only I kind of stopped paying attention to it when I was about 15.
Yeah.
But... the movies, for me, just mostly didn't do it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I like the movies.
I thought the first one was fine, and I just couldn't follow it from there. I think it was the choice to emphasize Wolverine as, like, the main character.
Yeah.
I never thought there needed to be a main character, if not for Professor X.
The one thing that I really hated about the X-Men movies is they super underpowered Storm. Which was...
Yeah, we've talked about that, for sure. Yeah.
I hate that. I don't know why they did that, because Storm was such a cool character. Like, she was straight from Africa, so she had that African accent. She was clearly like a fucking god. She was easily like the strongest or among the strongest mutants, and she even led the X-Men for a period of time. And in fact, now in the lore, she might still lead them. I don't know what's happening in the Marvel universe right now. I don't read it that much, but So I mean, she is clearly a very strong and powerful character, both in her personality and in her abilities. And then in the movies, they just made her like, like a second class
Yeah, and
X-Men.
it was the two reasons we could come up with were like she's either too powerful or there's just a bias against women characters in Marvel movies, which is probably maybe a little of both.
In that case, yeah, I think it is that. I mean, they wanted, they cast Halle Berry as her, which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with Halle Berry. I don't think she's a bad actress or anything, but they made her more, sexy and like a damsel in distress kind of womany type of thing, which like a tropey kind of thing, and that was it's just really boring because that character's way more interesting when she's powerful and a god, basically.
I'm thinking back to like the olden days of the original X-Men cartoon from like the early 90s.
Yeah.
And the characters they would always play up were usually like Rogue and Jubilee.
Yeah.
Who were both, fine characters, but they kind of conformed to that same like let the men run the show deal. I mean, Storm would show up and she'd fuck shit up sometimes, but I don't think she got as much screen time as she deserved.
Probably not, but that was also just because like I think
and
a lot
Rogue's power kind of plays into that too.
Yeah, but I think also with Storm, it was just kind of like, all right, Storm's a badass. She's gonna be doing her badass things. We've already established that like, she's gonna be the leader in a lot of situations. She doesn't really need a lot of a lot of ways with like Cyclops too, where it's like, all right, he's the Boy Scout leader type of guy, whatever. He doesn't need a lot of screen time because he's not that interesting.
I hate what they did to Cyclops. I actually liked him as a Boy Scout. Once they made him into like this rebellious, angsty guy, I didn't really think that fit his character anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that original cartoon series was really good, partly because that was pretty much directly the comic books, like the storyline.
Oh, sweet! So I actually know a little about the comic books then, because that's what I watched as the cartoon.
Yeah, no, it basically progresses in the same way that the comic books do, and I mean, I think it even goes line for line in some parts. So. It's pretty good.
Good on them for doing that.
X-Men is interesting. I really like X-Men. I really like Spider-Man. But and part of the thing is, they're good for different parts of your life, right? Because Spider-Man, the part of the thing that made Spider-Man such an important character and such a multi-million-dollar property as he is today is that he's a really relatable character, right? Like he's a superhero, but he's also like a nerd, which a lot of comic book enthusiasts are. He gets bullied, but he also wants to do the right thing, but he also has to deal with schoolwork and teenage problems and love and all this stuff, and that makes him a very, very relatable character. And that's, when I was a kid, I loved Spider-Man. I still love Spider-Man, but it was really relatable to me, growing up. And his whole transformation into Spider-Man is sort of like that metaphor of, that period in your life when you're in high school or middle school, whenever it happens, even in college for some people, where that really happens for you, where you kind of grow into the person you're going to be for the rest of your life, And that weird, awkward transitional phase where you're kind of grappling with, who am I? Do I like who I am? Do I like who I'm going to be? I don't know.
I get it.
And that's what Spider-Man, his whole story is about that.
But they rolled that into the X-Men, too, because, like, the Mutant Academy is all ages, and I never really thought about it until now, but, like, is it a school? Is it a boarding house? Is it college? Like, what?
It's like a boarding school, yeah.
Because there's, like, young people there, and there's adults there, and they're all living together.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I mentioned the Spider-Man and X-Men in the same breath, because it is sort of that way, too. Because their primary thing with mutants is sort of, like there are kind of two metaphors that are at work there. It's that same kind of transformation metaphor of like, grappling with who you are and what you can be versus based on your choices. And then it also grapples with racism, and that's the other thing that that X-Men does primarily.
It's so weird though how they whitewash the whole idea of like puberty in X-Men, because they'd all be banging constantly.
Yeah.
They just don't address that at all. Like, there's minor love flirtation stuff, but they don't really have relationships. They're almost asexual.
A lot of the time, yeah.
And that's just, like, you're belying the main trait of humanity if you're gonna do that.
Batman is in a similar way where he's kind of like he's kind of a human, not just asexual.
Right, in kind of a Sherlock-y way, though.
You're right, yeah, where, like, he's more married to his work than he is to anything else. Although it's really interesting a lot of the times when they go into like the love aspects of Batman's life, where it kind of makes him vulnerable, and that's always a really interesting storyline. He's not
interested, because he knows that makes him vulnerable, because he's pretty smart.
In the same way as Sherlock, like Sherlock is the same thing, where you know, they go over that, where it's like, you know, he doesn't like it because it makes him vulnerable.
Well,
it makes him do
you know
that
specific story arc though, where he let himself be a little vulnerable.
Right.
Right, and that kind of struck me as odd.
I mean, that one part in that episode though always makes me like kind of tear up in that moment where you thought he was vulnerable and he was turning off Sherlock so that he could,
and then he snapped it right back.
And then you realize that he never really turned it off because he can't. That's just he can't do it. As much as maybe it seems like he kind of wants to in that one scenario.
Baby step down in that direction and then realized he couldn't do it, and then he turned around.
And he still had to be Sherlock, even though he maybe wanted to not be for that moment. For that moment, he maybe didn't want.
Good.
Yeah, it is really good. But see, those are the kind of characters that are really interesting to me. Is those characters that are like so deeply rooted in their ethical and moral code that they have to do the things that they're doing. And another reason why, I mean, you know, it's weird for me to, I'm sure for a lot of people, for me to say this in the same breath as like Sherlock Holmes and like, you know, Batman and stuff, but a reason why I like John McClane from Die Hard is...
Why is that weird to say? It's all themes of justice, right?
Well, yeah. But in a slightly... Just because, like, you know, he's more of a crass type character, whereas people recognize him as, like, an action movie hero in a similar vein. Well, if you know him
through his actions, not through his, you know, articulateness, then...
Yeah. Right. Well, that's the thing, is, like, if you look at... That's why I love Die Hard, is because if you look at the actual... When John McClane is written correctly, he's such an interesting character because... he's a reluctant hero, and I've talked about this before. I love reluctant heroes because in what John McClane does, he only does those things in the movies. Again, I will emphasize when he's written right. He only does those things in the movies because he's the only one that can do them. As soon as anyone else is there, like if you look at the first movie in Die Hard, as soon as he gets to a place where he doesn't have to save people, like when he's sitting in the bathroom and he's got the walkie-talkie and he's talking to the cop and
he's just waiting.
Yeah, and the guy's like, and the guy down there is like, okay, so we're gonna take over now. The FBI are here. It's good. And John McClane's like, all right, man, I'll be waiting here. Good luck, because he's like, okay, I can leave it in the hands of somebody else. I don't have to do this. And then as soon as they start fucking it up again, John McClane's like, okay, well now they're fucking shit up, so I have to do this. Like, his moral code is so important to him that he will risk life and limb because he's the only one that can do the thing that has to be done, according to him.
And there's also the love interest involved too.
Yeah, that too, but I really think that's secondary to what...
I think it is secondary, I think you're right.
And because they expand upon it in the third movie, where they take away Holly, and they just make it about... And in that movie as well, they go back to that idea where if someone else was there to do it, John McClane would totally let them do it. But because he's the only one that can, he has to. According, like, in his mind... because no one else can do it, he is forced to do it. And that type of character is so interesting to me. I love that character. Maybe it's because I hope that's the type of man that I am as well. But, I don't know.
They always flirt with that idea for Batman, though, and I just don't think that's really him. He's very proactive.
He's not really a reluctant hero, but he has aspects of the reluctant hero.
He's conveniently reluctant is all it is.
Yeah, like he does the things because he wants to. And
he's also irrational,
at the same time,
too, so like you can't write him as if he was gonna react the way a normal person would.
Right, but at the same time, like he does have those elements of Batman was created... in his mind, at least, and in a lot of people's minds, I'm talking within the universe, Batman was created out of necessity, right? Like in Bruce Wayne's mind, Gotham needed to be saved, and the only way that he could do it was through Batman. And And so in that way, he kind of has those elements of a reluctant hero where, you know, he has to be Batman because the city needs him to be Batman. Dude, soon as he can as soon as the city doesn't need him anymore, he is willing to hang up the cape and cowl.
I just thought of the M. Night Shyamalan version of Batman, where Batman isn't ever a real person, and he is just a manifestation of a certain psychological corner of Bruce Wayne's mind.
Yeah.
Batman the Metaphor. That's actually the way you could do Batman the Metaphor, I guess.
Yeah, M. Night Shyamalan, get him to do it.
Show all of the actual scenes, but none of those scenes ever happened.
You know, M. Night Shyamalan doesn't think his telling of Avatar was bad. He thought it was pretty good. So.
What do you want me to say to that?
Anyway, we're at an hour and 44 minutes where I've just been ranting about Batman, so...
Somehow that went by kind of fast, though.
It did. However, I am very sweaty and I want to turn on my AC, so
right,
there's
fair.
also that.
Get on with our day. Thank you for listening to our rant, guys. We do appreciate you still being here.
Yeah.
We're fast approaching episode 200. I toyed around with the idea, what if we just talk for 5 hours? But that might be an awful idea.
Yeah, that'd be pretty funny. Yeah.
Anyway, we appreciate you watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and come on back. New episodes, hopefully Mondays and Fridays, or, you know, as often as we can, given our circumstances. See you soon.
Bye, everybody. This is Alpaca Patrol signing out. Peace, fools.